And yeah, so we are now live. And we're going to do indices today. So indices is just plural of index. And maybe what I should do is I should present to everybody probably. How do I do that? I don't know. Okay. All right. Am I on the screen full time?
Yeah.
Okay. So an index, indices is plural of index, and index is really just it's a number that tells you the relative size of something. Okay, so for example, a consumer price index tells you the relative price of a basket of goods. So the consumer price index was weighted with all the things that you might buy as a consumer, and so food, shelter, gasoline, transportation, all went into what's known as the CPI, or Consumer Price Index. And so statisticians took a very careful measure of all the things that people typically buy in order to be good consumers and to last, to make it through the day, so food, shelter, clothing, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to say in 1992, made that basket of goods have a value of 100. Okay? So rather than saying consumer price index is $592.37, they basically took a basket of goods and gave it a relative value of 100. So I don't exactly know what the value might have been in 1992. It might have been, $500. But they gave it a value of 100. Okay, here's my question. If the CPI is 131, how much has the basket of goods increased? And so you can give this as a percentage. Okay, so if the CPI is 131, how much has the basket of goods increased? And I'm going to say since 1992. And you can give this as a percentage if you want. Anybody? 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 Don't worry out there in YouTube land. It's okay to be wrong. By what percentage is that basket of goods increased?
I was gonna say 2, but that's wrong.
By 2.
No, don't say it to the internet.
100 to 131.
31. Oh, but that's a.
It's gone up by 1. Okay.
31.
I'd like it as a percent.
Oh my gosh.
So it's gone up 0.31, or by what percent?
31%.
It's gone up 31%. That's right. Yeah, okay. And so the Consumer Price Index gives us a good idea of what consumer inflation looks like. In other words, how much did the price of everything go up? So this is an important number that statisticians use, because if the CPI has increased 31%, but a wage index has only increased 25%, you know that people are losing purchasing power if wages are only rising by 25% and the CPI is going up by like 31%. And so statisticians look very carefully at this value. You'll see all kinds of indices in the financial markets, and so they have the TSE 300, the TSX index, which basically does the same thing. So it keeps track of the relative value of a group of stocks. And so they've chosen what they think are representative stocks of the Canadian economy, put them in a basket, and at a particular year they said, okay, this is 1,000, and that's the index. Okay, here's one. If I said to you BMI, it's not a kind of bike.
Oh.
Instead, it's an index. BMI. Hey, guess what that acronym stands for? The I stands for index.
This market.
Business.
Business?
Business measurement index. No.
Okay.
Nice try though.
Thanks.
This is actually body mass index.
Not even close to what we were thinking.
Why are we writing it that way?
We're not. Okay.
Okay, so maybe you've heard about that. So I could say I weigh 180 pounds, and someone else could say I weigh 100 pounds, and that would actually not mean too much. It sounds like I'm really, really heavy, but maybe I'm just big boned, and the other person is lightly boned. So body mass index is actually calculated by taking your mass in kilograms and dividing it by your height in meters, and not just dividing it by your height, but dividing it by your height squared. Okay? So this is how you calculate BMI. So it's definitely not perfect, but what it does, it tells you if you are heavy for your height. And so it just gives you that number that you can judge yourself relative to kind of a standard there. Okay? So if the BMI, a healthy BMI, is somewhere between 18.5 and 25. So you just take your mass in kilograms divided by your height squared in meters, and hopefully it comes out to a number between 18.5 and 25. It's maybe slightly bigger for somebody like me who's big boned, particularly around my stomach area. Might be a little bit higher than that, but you know, body mass index is not perfect. Okay, so that gives you an idea of two indices. So we've looked at the consumer price index and how that tells us what's happened to prices relative to a particular time. The base number there was 100, and we can readily calculate percentages. And then body mass index is another thing that lets us calculate how our weight to height ratio is and whether it's in a healthy range. And it takes mass, divides it by height squared, so that you're taking into account taller people are going to weigh more. So it's another way that we can use an index to kind of tell us where we are relative on a scale. Okay? If you're over 25 on the BMI, you're starting to get a little bit overweight. If you're under 18.5, which I was sure I was going to be, you can eat more. All right, there are lots of other indexes. There are ways of calculating those indexes. So for example, the Terrorism Index. So there's a way of weighting all the various terrorist acts that have happened in a country and coming up with an index. And it just tells you how much terrorism there is in a country relative to any other country. Okay, so Canada's like a 2.8 on the International Terrorism Index. Okay, and that's indexes.